Thanks everyone for coming. I think we set up 60 chairs maybe, so we have a great turnout. And what that means is that we have a growing community here that is interested in what we all do that affects the lake, either positive or negative. And I'm really pleased to see new faces and really happy with this whole group that's here. I'd also like to thank our presenters today. Mark Kaiser here, raise your hand, Mark. We met him last year, and we've been working with him for about 3 years. We have made remarkable progress in learning about our lake under his guidance. Our learning has accelerated so much with his help. And he's introduced us then to Mark Luttington, who has sort of a future view of the lake. He's done a lot of studies on Higgins Lake that has a lot of the same characteristics as our lake. And Mark, when he talks, you're gonna pick up on this. You're gonna say, yeah, I know that's happening here too. And he's kind of can show you the progression that is ahead of us from a lake that is maybe 10 years ahead of us from a development perspective. So thanks guys for donating your Saturday and educating all of us. We really appreciate it. I'd like to also thank all of the helpers that pulled this meeting together. And there are so many, but my wife Liz did an awful lot. Steve Wild kind of set up our facility. We had Bev and Liz Haas have been really involved in the content and HABS program. Mary Rocco organized our nice beverages with lots of help from Jody McKee and Linda Sandvik with all of the materials that you can take away. Ann Pinnanen had registered you. She was the frontman face that welcomed you. And so we appreciate all of their help and all of the people that contributed to the status report that you all received. I think you all received. Everybody received the status report that kind of like a magazine. It's a lot of work went into that. So thank you, everyone. Then a quick word that this meeting is being recorded, so you need to be on your best behavior. And Steve warned me that he's operating the kiss cam, so I asked him if he would please let me know when he's going to fire up the kiss cam, just so you can be on guard. So we are, I should know this, but I think BLPS is 8 years old now.
9.
It's 9 years old. That's what I was going to say. And so with 9 years, we've changed our model a number of times. And I think, you get too complicated for people to relate to. And we had a few missteps, but we like where we are right now with these deep dive studies that we're doing with an annual readout with a report that's a lot to digest, but it's really good information. With a community meeting to follow up. We have a really good website. We have accolades to our website all the time. And we have an active dialogue on Facebook. So these are the 4 primary ways that you can keep up with all that we're doing and all that we're learning. I wanted to share with you 3 takeaways from me leading this group for the last 9 years. And there are 3 things that I wanted to share, and these 3 things had to do with all lake associations, not Black Lake, not any particular group, but they're just 3 things that are key challenges. And I'm speaking to this as the group of people that have the common goal and interest in preserving our lake, keeping it the way it is as long as possible. So we as a group, it's not really the association, it's our community. And our community challenge number 1, this is a funny concept that lakes age. I remember the moment I heard this the first time in 8th grade biology, my teacher saying, and Mark challenged me on this last night. He told me I'm not 100% accurate, but you keep quiet, you'll get your turn up here. And she said, you know, lake ages just like our bodies age, and there are things that we do that accelerate that aging and things that we do that decelerate that aging, and I thought that was fascinating at the time, and I keep bumping into it. So the first challenge is having enough people that are tuned into that and want to know what are the things that accelerate and decelerate the aging. The real things, not the anecdotal things that we hear constantly where everybody has the answer. It's evidence-based, and can we all get on the same page and agree with what these key challenges are for us? That's number one. Number two is something called the tragedy of the commons, and maybe you've heard of this, but this was a title of a book, I think in the 90s, and it became very, very popular then. And the idea is down below that individuals acting in their own self-interest deplete or ruin a shared resource, even when it's clear that doing so is collectively detrimental. So the pictures up there show that if you share a plot of grazing land and there is a carrying capacity of that land, then if someone adds one or two, it sort of degrades the common asset. And if everybody follows suit, well, then you're unable to support the activity. So I just point that out because Black Lake is our common asset. And, you know, not to be too direct, but a lot of people will say, well, you know, it's my property, I'm gonna clear forested land and put in a lawn. That's what this is getting at, that's what people want to do, they're gonna do it. Our lake is 90-some% private property. Everybody's gonna do what they're gonna do on their property, but our goal as a community is for us to think alike, and as you make your own decisions, which you're free to do, that you do it with an understanding and a recognition of whether it's accelerating or decelerating aging of the lake. And as long as you're aware, then the association's done its job. You know, we kind of try to raise the level of awareness of this. This picture on the bottom right, I put that there because 2 weeks ago I was visiting a friend on Little Glen Lake, and I was amazed as I drove up to his place and passed 50 cottages. Almost every one of them had this sign out front. Now I think this is a dumb, I shouldn't say it's a dumb sign, but Keep It Blue is something like you see in like Lake Tahoe has this program. It's a very common thing. It's not very actionable, but it signifies that people are on board. It signifies that we have a community that's on board with the goal. And disagree with me if you will, but I don't think our community has that. We haven't had to rely on it yet because we don't have the same development pressure that other lakes have. But when those other lakes were faced with the development pressure, many of them were very negatively impacted and their waters become impaired. So I think we still have a job to do on this lake, that we have a fantastic community of people present here that are saying, hey, I want to know, I want to understand, I want to devote my Saturday morning to understanding. There are a lot of homes around this lake that aren't here. So we kind of all need to talk to people and get them on board. The third challenge that I want to point out to you is something called the shifting baseline syndrome. And this became popular same era, I believe, but maybe you saw these pictures there was a series of photos that made this a very popular concept. And the first photo was in 1950, a group of fishermen in front of a sign on a pier in the Florida Keys displaying their catch. And their catch was impressive. Big fish, lots of them, and big smiles on the fishermen's faces. The next picture was 1960. The fish weren't as big, they weren't as great in number, but the smiles were just as big. The same progression happens with 1970 and 80. So the point here is this, that your first interaction with an environment establishes your baseline, and this baseline will be markedly different from your grandparents or your grandchildren. So what that means is your view of how much change has occurred and how positive or negative that is going to be based on your baseline. And your baseline is different from my baseline. And your kid's baseline is different from your baseline. So this baseline is formed with your first interaction. I remember my baseline being formed when 45 years ago I started visiting my girlfriend's family. She's my wife now. She's my wife and my girlfriend, but this image stays in my mind. They have this floodlight on the front of the house, and they've taught me this. The front of the house is the back of the house that faces the water. So on the front of the house that's in back, they had this floodlight on the water, and you know how the light can cut through water and you can see very clearly. Well, the bottom of the lake had the waves from the wave action of the water formed on this soft, beautiful, uniform sand. And through that sand were cut lines from the freshwater clams. And up, when you look at the light, there's a swarm of insects and bats swooping through the insects, gobbling them all up. So from my baseline perspective, we don't have that sandy bottom anymore. We don't. Okay? It's not what it was when I first was coming up here, not even close. We don't have any freshwater clams. We don't have any bats. We have the mosquitoes.
We have a bat in our house.
Okay.
This year, first bat we've seen probably in years, so it's in our house.
That's great. That's good news. You're happy, right? So, this is an important concept because we're going to contend from the BLPS. We're sort of focused on 4 defects in our lake that are changing, and we all need to accept this. So the lake bottom is changing. This sandy area, at least on the shore that I'm most familiar with, and I'm in the water a lot, it's crusty, it's loamy. You know, most of the time I'm wearing booties, but when I'm in bare feet, you can feel it is very different from what it used to be. There are patches of weeds, and there are soft, gooey spots, and we're going to talk about what's happening and why that is occurring. But our lake bottom is changing. Our weed coverage is changing. So when we first bought our cottage, it came with a 16-foot aluminum, little fishing boat with a little outboard. And I was out at the drop-off in September, and this school of walleye, I presume they're walleye, this big, seemingly endless, passed right by the boat. I was like, wow, this is great. But you don't see that anymore. That's just not here. So our fish survival, our fish habitat has changed. Our weed coverage, one of the reasons you wouldn't see those fish now is because it's all weed bed where I saw those fish, because the weeds are expanding at a pretty good pace. And now we have Habs blooms. And it won't be long before those Habs blooms are kind of a normal thing. They're going to be part of someone's baseline because we will have been experiencing them while they have had their relationship with the lake. Most of our lake either doesn't know what a Habs bloom is, doesn't think it's important, and it's not dialed in. But this, I will assure you, this is a very serious problem. So we used to live in Maryland on the Chesapeake Bay, on a little bay off the Chesapeake Bay. So brackish water, an estuary, and a great place to visit, by the way. But one spring we had so much rain that inundated our bay, it turned fresh. And we had a little mussel just waiting for that day that the water turned fresh. It's called a false dark mussel. And they exploded in numbers and cleared the water, just like our super mussels do, just for a season. And what moved into that whole of the ecosystem was cyanobacteria. And we had a community of 150 homes. 7 dogs got liver poisoning, 5 of them died. So that wakes up a community. We don't want an event like that to show us how important this HABs, how risky this HABs situation is. Until now, I can understand why people haven't dialed in that much, because it happens in the fall when most of us are gone. In fact, Liz Haas over here saw one in November last year that was measured and confirmed to be a HABs bloom way after anybody thought that this could happen. And this year, we had a confirmed bloom at the state park in their swimming area. And Beth Haas and I took photos of people swimming right next to the bloom. We talked to the people in the state park, and they're like, "What's a HABs bloom?" So it's okay. We've got some work to do. Anyway, we have 4 things that are changing in our lake. Depending on what your baseline is, you may perceive it or you may not perceive it. But that's our challenge: is we all have to make sure that our baseline does this. What is the history of our lake that we live on, that we're so invested in, that we want to have our kids, our grandkids have the same experience that many of us have had. So this was passed out to you as you walked in, this card. And it was my attempt at making something very, very complicated, somewhat less complicated. That's not my forte. It's probably too complicated still. But anyway, put this on your refrigerator, because when you read reports from the BLA or from the BLPS, and we're talking about SECI disc readings or about N and P and CLA and DO, this kind of puts it in relation to each other. Now, I am fully aware of the people around the lake saying, we don't need more studies. We need action. And it's so true. But a lot of those people are saying, we need action, we need the associations to do something, or we need the watershed council to do. No, if all of our property is private property, no one's gonna do anything but us. So you don't look for someone else to make changes that are gonna help or hurt our lake, it's us. So our objective with this is to prove, because we have, it's easy, and I was using this term with Mark Levinson last night, it's easy to look at this problem as a death by 1,000 cuts. You get so many people telling you that the problems with our lake are because we have too many geese, or the problem with our lake is because of the golf courses releasing water from their retention ponds, or because of farming on the rainy river. You hear all kinds of things. What Mark is going to tell you is, from measuring the lake and tracking the sources, he's going to tell you not what the 1,000 cuts are, but what are the gashes. And if we can all focus on the couple gashes, that's going to evolve our community. Now, I want to just point out, on the back table, Linda had a couple of handouts, and I would like you to pay attention to a few of them. So I'll talk real loud without the microphone, but this is really the start of the chain. It's the nutrients that get into our lake. And they do get into it from 1,000 different cuts. This document from the Shoreland Stewards points out a self-assessment test that you can take, and it asks you 100 questions privately. The BLPS has tried for years to promote this test. The BLA has tried for years to promote this test. When you take the test, you say, what lake am I from? Nobody from our lake takes this test.
This is a very important and actually an enjoyable exercise to go through. I went through it with my family years ago. And you learn all kinds of stuff. You say, you're kidding me. We shouldn't be doing that. And sometimes you say, I'm still going to do that. But sometimes you say, yeah, we don't need to do that. We can do it differently. So this is a key point right here is all of these sources, all of the 1,000 cuts. You can learn about it with the shoreline stewards. Those nutrients turn into algae. The proxy for our algae count is chlorophyll A. You'll see that in reports. It's phytoplankton. And phytoplankton is the food of choice for mussels and for zooplankton. So if there's less phytoplankton because of the mussels, there's less zooplankton. When fish hatch in the spring, if there's no zooplankton, guess what? They don't live. That's why we don't have walleye naturally sustaining in the lake, because there's no zooplankton when they hatch. There are other species that hatch earlier, and they seem to be doing pretty well. But this is a key problem. And then the zebra mussels, what do? But they go to the bathroom in our lake, and their waste decays, consumes dissolved oxygen, which shrinks the habitat for fish. It increases water clarity, and together with these nutrients in the clear water and sunshine, our weeds expand. The low oxygen environments cause phosphorus to be released from the sediments in the lake. That, coupled with our septic pulse that Mark is going to talk about, we use our septic systems all summer, and by fall, the leachate has moved through our sandy soils and arrives at the lake, and boom, we have HABs blooms. And all of the decaying matter, Mark Levin's going to talk about this, and our septic pulse turns our bottom into a crusty monkey bottom. The Fresh Start program, this little document, gives you a frequency of pump out. You should probably pump out even more frequently than this, because I believe, I have no evidence of this, but we walked around house to house, and Jody McKee and John Muller and Ben Pass and others walked house to house, and we went 2 years without a confirmed HABs bloom because so many people pumped out that year. So this is a real thing. And you say, well, what can we do about invasive mussels? We're not getting rid of zebra mussels. Well, maybe that's true. Mark has a couple ideas he shared with me. Maybe he's going to share them with you today. But I'll tell you what, if, and I dare say when, we get zebra mussels in our lake, it's all over. Okay, we can't have zebra mussels get in our lake. We can't do it. And Mark Buttington will agree with you.
Quagga.
What did I say?
You said zebra.
Yeah.
You meant the other mussel,
The other one.
quagga.
And I was being so dramatic, let me do that. We can't. So quagga mussels are all around us. And at our boat launches, if we're not doing clean, drain, dry, this is really gonna harm our lake, okay? And the lakes around us, Mark's gonna talk about Higgins Lake, it's pretty bad. Now, this new boat launch that we're all celebrating on the Lower Black, bigger boats, more boats, easier access to the lake, fishing tournaments, yay. No, terrible. We've been lucky to keep quagga mussels out of our lake until now. If that gets the level of use that the DNR intends, it's all over. Okay, so that's what we can do here. Not everyone agrees with me. That was sort of editorial, but I wouldn't have said it if Mark didn't tell me last night that I'm absolutely right. So with harmful algae blooms, our situation is that the health department will tell us we've had 19 blooms in the past 5 years. The real answer is we have no idea, because there's probably only 10 people looking for them that know what they're looking for, and we've got to expand that. We need a whole community. So we have a group of 7 people that are trained to quickly get to a site and perform a test with just a test strip. Not scientists, but we'll figure out
if it is in fact a cyanobacteria bloom. And because of the cyanobacteria we have in our lake, in its DNA is the propensity to create microcystin, a liver toxin that harms our bodies invisibly, can kill our pets, harms our kids. So we assume if we test positive, we have a dangerous situation, the community needs to be alerted. So this is something to keep handy that says, who do we call, what do we do? Anyone can join this organization. So if you're BLA, BLPS, it doesn't matter. We have a little text thread that's gonna go to all the people that sign up. They've all been issued tests that we purchased, and they'll be deployed. The tests only last 1 year, so we want to use all of our tests. They're very expensive. So look at our website at what HABs blooms looks like. If you detect one, let us know. We'll get a test. If it tests positive, we get a sample in a jar, give it to the state, we get a measure of the level of toxicity, and we keep learning as a community how we're affected by this. So where is this all leading us? From a BLPS perspective, our priorities are, our community needs to focus on septic systems. We need to understand this is the big problem. The pulse in the fall is harmful to our lake. And there are things short of a system replacement that we can be doing. Okay, you can pump out more often. You can have a variety of plants between your drain field and the lake that give, grass is nothing in terms of the root structure. Some ground cover goes a little deeper, shrubs go deeper, trees go real deep. If you have a mix of those between your drain field and the lake, they're gonna pick up a lot of stuff. Mark has other ideas that are pretty innovative to help us deal with this, but our problem is we have a lot of aging septic systems that aren't very effective at removing nutrients before they start their path to the lake. The second is we need more awareness of HABs. We need to utilize this group to do detection, testing, reporting of HABs, and we need to talk to our neighbors about it and let them know, this isn't made up, and that bloom is not pollen. That bloom is toxic. And for someone who spends as much time in the lake as I do, it breaks my heart to say that, but it's very risky. Maintaining vigilance against invasive mussels. We have zebra mussels. We now have Asian clam. We don't know what that means to us. Hopefully not too much. And we have to prevent quaggas. We have gaps in our model. We don't know much about the role of nitrogen. We don't know a whole lot about our full algae community. We don't know a lot about zebra mussel predation. Mark has a lot of ideas that he's going to share with us, I think. And we don't know much about the mixing in the lake. We know that the groundwater close to the lake near these old systems is loaded with E. coli and with HABs. And it's on its way to the lake, but we don't know where it goes after it gets in the lake. We don't know about currents and mixing and where our blooms might show up. And then finally, we are hopeful to have a new era of cooperation between this organization and the BLA, sharing of knowledge and sharing of what I'll call mind share, the connection with people and members. And we're pleased that this seems to be going pretty well, that both organizations recognize the need and some progress being made. So I talked way too long, but I'm going to turn things over to Mark Kaiser, and then we'll give you a break to refill your plates and cups, and then we'll hear from Mark Levinson. And hopefully we'll have some time for questions after each speaker and then at the closing of the session. So keep track of your questions.